Let's take a look at our grotesque style as part of the Voodoo Concept Art series. This is probably one of the most linear and forgiving styles to do for a few reasons. All the facial features are pushed a lot, so you don't need perfect or even particularly good facial anatomy. All the line work is deliberately broken, like it was done with an inker that's nearly worn out, so you don't need perfect or even neat strokes. And finally, we're not going for real world colours for any of these, so we don't have to worry about accurate skin tones and can instead focus on getting interesting and vibrant colours in there. We've created this using our own Voodoo Concept Art pack, which has hundreds of tools for this and other styles. You don't need to use it to follow along, but it'll be cool if you could check it out at the link below. One of the most important things for this style is the overall silhouette. We're looking for interesting shapes for all the main parts of the sketch, especially contrasting sizes and shapes. The head is very triangular, which gives an alien-esque appearance. The axe shape is interesting even without pushing it, and we've created size contrast with the shoulders to the actual torso and limbs, which are quite noodly. The shoulders get exaggerated further with the fur around them, plus having the shoulder armour on top of these, which has long spikes to push this even further. You can see the shoulders end up being twice the width of the chest. We're not looking to draw super accurate facial features or hands, they're heavily simplified and stylised, but there's still a consistency throughout the piece with how this is handled. A key feature of this style is asymmetry, not just in features but also in composition. The ponytail strap, axe and arm holding it with the elbow sticking out break the silhouette symmetry, but even within the face we look to make things non-symmetrical without falling apart. The eyebrows are at different angles and rotation, the forehead lines are off-centre, the mouth is angled and uneven sizes on the sides of the lips and so on. The inking step is one of the most important in this style. You want it to look a little messy but still hold everything together in an aesthetic way. Often it's preferable to have smooth, consistent single strokes on a piece, but for this one it's almost better to use multiple strokes for single line segments to add to the style. The inker you choose will do a lot of the heavy lifting here. We're using one from our Voodoo pack that breaks up like a worn out inker when you press lightly, so it has a lot of variation and roughness straight out of the box. We don't use much brush size variation on this style. It would pretty much feel like it's something you've sketched just using one pen in a loose, casual way. Let some lines overlap or not join up perfectly too. Just work your way around until you've all your lines in place. We're pretty happy with our inking, but we want to make a few tweaks. First, we thought it would be more interesting to push the shape of the spikes even further. You can just erase and redraw them, but we'll just quickly use the Select and Transform tool to take what we've already done, rotate and scale them to break them up. Any little retouches we can draw back in. We're also going to erase some of our lines as it's feeling just a little bit too busy in places, so we'll dial this back, particularly in our hair. We're going to create our flat colours now. It's just basic colouring in. Create a new layer for each of your base colours. Don't worry too much about having perfect colours at this stage. The important thing is to have solid and opaque areas filled in, which will be the foundation for all the other colours we'll add in later. Next up, we'll start adding the shadows. We'll make a few tweaks to the base colours as we go, using the hue saturation sliders to change each of the colours. Creating a new layer and clipping it to the base hair colour layer, so that only the parts inside the shape of the base layer are shown. I'll colour pick from the hair colour I've chosen and pick a slightly darker version of the colour. Check out the link below for the tips video, which shows lots of stuff like this. I like to use something like a marker or painterly brush in this style, as it gives everything a more hand-drawn look, makes everything look less digital. With the initial shadow layer done, we'll create a new layer and repeat the process again with a darker colour. Already we can start to see a bit of depth coming into the piece. We just work our way around the artwork, focusing on each colour layer, setting the base colour and then adding a shadow layer for each one. As everything starts to build up nicely, we'll also start adding layers with lighter colours too. Again, it's a case of colour picking base colours you're working in and dragging them up to a lighter version of them. It's good in general to not just simply use white for light and black for darker colours, as it'll always end up looking a little bit flat. As you can see, 90% of this illustration is repeating the same steps over and over again, Take your base colour, add a layer for shadows, add a layer for light, and refine everything as you go. We wanted to pay a little more attention to the eye war paint. I wanted to add a little bit of depth to the eye socket before reintroducing the paint. So I've added a colour dodge layer and used a soft brush to lighten up parts of them to give them more dimension. With that done, I reintroduce the colour, play with the hue and saturation and blend modes to get something that I'm happy with. We've created an effects group in Photoshop to make things a little easier. It's not entirely necessary for this style, but we do it on most of our illustrations at some point. We're using Photoshop right now for this, so we've selected all the flat colour shapes by pressing Command or Control plus Shift and clicking on the thumbnail of each of the flat layers to build up a selection of the silhouette. Then with the folder selected, we've created a layer mask. Now everything that we put inside this folder will stay inside the silhouette lines. First, we're going to use a subtle texture brush to add speckles across the whole piece to give it a little bit more texture. Next, we're going to create a noise layer in this folder. Create a layer, fill it with white, then go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. I usually use an amount of about 20% with uniform distribution and monochromatic turned on. Change the blend mode to linear burn and check it out. After this, we're just working our way around the piece, refining the detail, focusing on adding small shadows or highlights to build up definition and shape. For a finishing touch, we're going to add in a layer, set the blend mode to colour dodge to add some overall light and warmth to the piece. Pure red is usually a good colour to start out with here. Using a soft brush, we gently add light parts to the body across the entire piece to add more vibrancy. So that's it, that's our Grotesque style warrior all done and dusted.